if you want to be heard, speak more softly. That was the advice President John F. Kennedy gave to college students who said, how can we influence better? And today's guest, Ali Stewart, speaks more softly than I do. She's a best-selling author of several books. Liberating Leadership is the principle and philosophy that she has and that we as a business at Uspire believe in too. Ali is also the leading practitioner of colour insights in the UK. And so it's that subject that we're going to start with today and then move on to what is critical in terms of leadership behaviour right now. Please welcome Ali Stewart.
Good afternoon, Mark. Lovely to see you too.
I'm loving that background because of the colours, but also the butterflies.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm loving your background too, Mark, with the colours and the butterflies on the books.
Yeah, and there's a lovely connection with the Boostcast because the colour energies here are small paintings by Lewis Parsons, who you and I both know and was on a previous Boostcast.
Yeah.
And on Tuesday's Boostcast, we were fortunate to have a tribal chief and a nomad, and they talked a lot about value-based leadership, trust being right at the heart of leadership. So I thought it'd be wonderful to get your insights about liberating leaders, which is your philosophy. It's also the nature of the two books that are behind me that you have written with Derek Biddle. And as a follower, so I am someone who has the great privilege of being accredited as a liberating leader, but I'm also someone who is a huge believer in colour energies and colour preferences. I'd love to start with that and then come back to liberating leaders a wee bit later. And talk to me about why the style and colour energies are so important for us.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Mark. And setting your visibility of style as a leader is of paramount importance. Many people believe that leaders are born and not made. I don't. I think there are some natural born leaders. They're few and far between and they shine. The rest of us can learn, and we learn by any means we possibly can. But it starts with deciding what sort of leader am I? What is the legacy I want to leave? What do I want to be remembered for when I'm gone? And actually, we're probably all quite familiar with colour models of some sort. And it doesn't matter which colour energy or which temperament or style you lead with, as long as it's consistent and visible to other people. So anybody can lead, and your style will show, will bring the flair to leadership. And just decide.
What struck me as you were speaking, Ali, was the contrast between Anthony Willoughby, who was on the last Boostcast, who is an absolute expressive, and your own style, which is more reflective and effectively a different colour preference. So tell me a little bit about those colour preferences. For those who haven't come across colour insights before, what are the four colour energies from your perspective?
So the natural leaders doesn't necessarily make you a great leader, but the natural leaders are fiery red because they are the most competitive, demanding, purposeful, driven. They're action-oriented, they're out there, they're extroverts. So they bubble to the top very quickly, but unless they learn how to lead with emotional intelligence, it can be a little bit abrasive. There are the sunshine yellow leaders who are the most spontaneous and warm and effusive and sociable of all the leaders. Then there are the earth green leaders, and they have much more of a servant leadership style. They push their people first, they push their people to be in front and don't take the credit for it necessarily. And then there are the cool blue leaders who need things to be done properly. We don't cut rules when we're in a cool blue leadership space. We do things by the book because doing things like that keeps us all safe. So it doesn't matter whether you're red, yellow, green, or blue, everybody can manage brilliantly. And actually, the highest performing leaders have to be able to tap into all four colours. One style does not fit all.
So what I'm hearing, and I absolutely agree and endorse, is this point that leaders can be, you can learn leadership, it can be taught, and that there is no color preference or style preference that lends itself more to being a great leader. It's more about adaptability.
Absolutely right, yes. All are equally valid. We all need all, which is hard.
And tell me just a little bit about, in your book, one of the chapters is called Different Strokes for Different Folks. And tell me a little bit more about that, because that's in the space of adapting style, isn't it? To connect, to inspire, to motivate. Tell me a little bit more.
Totally. So when we're talking about different strokes for different folks, we're tapping into the motivation of the person. As leaders, we start to do that when their own internal motivation kicks in. They want to do the job. They are becoming skilled to do the job. So now it's our role to give them the right environment for their learning, for their growth, for their ongoing development. And different people need different things. Some people need heaps of attention and, cups and trophies to show how well they're doing or their name on the door. Other people need low-key acknowledgement and maybe time off actually to go away and think and study. So it's whatever the person needs, then the leader is providing the right environment for that.
That's great. And if we could move on next, Ali, to, you call them attitudes. Some people call them mindsets. So I prefer attitudes. What are the attitudes? And I know, as someone who works with you, that I know what they are, but I think it's about you sharing them with others, the ones that are fundamentally important to enable growth and change.
So the attitudes, Mark, underpin, I think, the mindset that we need. So the two particular attitudes come from really good counseling theory, which are positive regard and genuineness. And all leaders need heaps of positive regard and genuineness. But positive regard is like, well, I liken it to the unconditional love that you have for your children. I could say to my children, I will love you to the end of time. We just need to talk about your behavior right now. So it's not about the individual. It doesn't matter what color or shape or size they come in, or what they believe, or anything like that. I regard them as a fundamental, decent human being. And is their attitude and their behavior such now to meet our goals or not? And that's where I'm giving them feedback. And that's where the genuineness comes in. Because I need to be able to frankly tell them about my reaction to their behavior right now. And for some types, particularly if you lead with earth green energy, which I have heaps of, I have to really pay attention to giving frank, honest feedback in the moment about somebody's behavior. Whereas I have heaps of positive regard, I generally will give people the benefit of the doubt. Other leaders, on the other hand, may, for instance, my husband, and he knows I talk about him like this, in his model of the world, he's great at genuineness. You can see on his face whether he likes what you're doing or whether he doesn't. And, he will regard you as an imbecile until you prove yourself otherwise. So for him, positive regard, is the thing he needs to focus on. And for every leader, they will be hooked into one or the other more. And getting the two in balance is really crucial.
What resonates for me, Ali, when you first introduced the concept to me, is as someone who under stress goes to a red energy. So I want to take control, and I want to be strident, and I am strident, and the voice level goes up, and I have a push energy. The classic example for me is, and I'm so much better now because of positive regard, is when I'm driving and someone cuts me up, the red energy kicks in, and my whole instinct used to be critical in some way, and usually verbally, and maybe even physically in a nasty way. And that's the opposite of positive regard.
Yes.
And what the attitude taught me is that individual has an intention that is probably good. And it might be that they're in a rush for someone important in their lives, and they are distracted. And that drove the behavior. Now that softens the stressed red energy in me. I suppose it's maturity as well, but without the words of positive regard, it wouldn't be in the forefront of my mind. And our friend and my colleague Amanda, when we are talking about customers that we're a bit frustrated by, Amanda has a lovely behavior that she calls out to both of us, positive regard. And it just checks that opposite of positive regard. So that's a great attitude to have in our minds. The other one I'd love you to talk about a little bit is high expectation. And it's kind of connected, isn't it? If I've got positive regard from an individual, I expect great things. So tell me a little bit more about high expectation.
It's dramatically important for leaders to have high expectations, because if you put people down in your mind, like some of those clients that you're being frustrated with at the minute, that's where they'll stay. So having consistent high expectations of your people, of your clients, of anybody you're dealing with, look, they are doing the best they can with the resources they have available, but I expect the best, because if I expect the best, I am going to get the best from them. You know, expectations is all about you get what you give. So if you expect high, you'll get high. If you give love, you'll get love in return. If you give hate, you'll get hate in return. So setting expectations high in everything we do is critically important, and transmitting that to the people. You know, I want you to do really good work. I want you to be happy in your work and to feel like you're progressing. So, you know, just expecting the best from them. And the stories in the book, you know, if you expect a lot from a group, you will get a lot. If you don't expect them to perform, they're not going to perform.
And there's this lovely, I think this is scientific study, that when they had a group of school children, they split them into two groups, and they said to one group, you are the really, really bright ones. And to the other group, unfortunately, you're not particularly bright. And there'd been no science in terms of splitting the groups at all. But one teacher set kept saying, you're the really bright ones with high potential to one group, and the opposite to the other. And of course, the impact was exactly as you've described. People performed to the expectation level that was set for them.
Yes. And you know what it's like yourself when you have maybe, you know, in your earlier days working for a leader who saw more in you, which is definitely what Derek did with me. He saw more in me than I knew I was capable of. And he pushed me to get there. And I was happy to go with it.
And so, thank you. I'd love to move on to skills now, because some of the key competencies you call out reflect back what Anthony was saying around the skill of communication right now is more vital than ever from leaders. And so one of the skills that for me, again, is front of mind because of your studies and your books is called explicitness. Can you describe what that is in your words, Ali? Because it's the completeness of the definition, I think, is hugely valuable.
Explicitness, Mark, is one of those skills which can make a profound difference to everybody, leaders and practitioners, when they hear about it. One practitioner was troubled by her cleaner. And she says all she does is push the hoover around. She doesn't dust the skirting boards or clean the windows. And I said, have you asked her? And she said, well, no, any self-respecting cleaner should know to clean the skirting boards and wash the windows. I said, well, she isn't doing it. So if you are just explicit and say to her, please, can you do those two things? I'm sure she will. So when you're really clear, rather than working off your own model of the world and your own expectations of what people should or shouldn't be doing, it makes it sets people up to succeed. Otherwise, you're actually setting them up to fail. You know, in that person's mind, the cleaner was failing and she was a bit of a non-person. Whereas if she'd said, look, when you come, I need you to wash the windows and do the skirting boards, and I'd like that done once a week. And if it's not done, you and I are going to have a chat to make it really clear. So explicitness is two things, and quite often leaders forget the second thing. It's describing really clearly what your model of good performance looks like. So windows and skirting boards once a week. But it's also painting the picture of what bad behavior is. So if you fail to do those two things once a week, you and I are having a chat. So there's always a consequence. So for leaders, some leaders say to me, oh, you know, I need all my managers to put in a report on a Friday by 4 o'clock, and they never do. And I say, okay, should we get them in on Friday at 4 o'clock this week? So we just say by 4 o'clock, you know, if it's not in, this is the impact. And usually I get the leader to tell me what the penalty is. Either I can't include your submission in my report to the board, and it will be obvious by its absence, or whatever it is. You know, the leader usually has the answer. So what does good performance look like, and what does poor performance look like?
And what I like about that is about clarity. It's absolute clarity. It comes back to this point about high expectation. Be super clear what that expectation is. And what I really like about your definition is both the positive and the potentially negative consequence of doing it or not doing it. And that's the complete explicitness skill, which I think is essential. And even more essential when there is doubt and some degree of uncertainty in our society at the moment. Clarity of messaging becomes even more vital.
And actually, Mark, clarity of messaging even when you don't know. So that whole communication with your people, especially in times of dramatic change like we're in, even if you don't have all the answers right now, if you're explicit with them about not having the answers, look, right now, we don't know what the answer is, but I am going to update you daily so that you get to know what I know as soon as I know it. And that's what we're going to do, because we don't know what's coming down the line. So explicitness in everything you do and communicating that with your people is crucial.
Thank you. Feedback, Ali, the crucial skill set of giving feedback. Why, in your view, is that so important?
Without feedback, people cannot thrive and grow. I'm sure people have been in environments where they never get any feedback at all. It's very disheartening. You just go to work, you do your job, you go home, and it's not fulfilling at all. Feedback enables us to succeed. It enables us to know where we're going right and also where we're going wrong. So if leaders are really clear about giving frank, honest feedback, look, Mark, you know, you're going to work in my team. I'm going to give you feedback every day on how you're doing, particularly in the early days, just so you know you're on track. Would that be helpful? And then most people thrive with that. They don't need it when they become internally motivated to do it. They're their own feedback giver.
One of the exercises you do in your workshops, which I think is just so illustrative of what you've just said, is you line up a group of people and they all get different sorts of feedback. And the last one gets none. They're just ignored. The feedbacker gives good feedback, bad feedback, factual feedback, gets to the last one and just says nothing. And having been in that line myself, that's easily the worst feeling, is to get no feedback at all.
Easily, yes. And children can't grow without feedback, without that recognition. And, you know, you see toddlers in playgrounds toddling away from the parent. They need a direct line to the parent. So the parent can say, you're okay, keep going, you're fine, I've got you. If anybody comes in between that direct line between toddler and parent, they become frustrated, you know, they get distressed and move so that they still have a direct line. Yeah, you're doing great, keep going. It's inbuilt in us.
Thanks, Ali. There are two more things I'd love to cover because they are as profound as what we've already discussed. One is the support and challenge conundrum, I'm going to call it, because it's the balance of the two things that generates exceptional leadership. Can you just bring that to life a little bit for us?
So, Mark, this is the sweet spot for leaders. If we don't get these two things in balance, we are absolutely snookered. This is the mindset. Can I share my screen? Can I draw something? And maybe if anybody watching gets a pencil and a paper, this might just be really useful to map out.
Thanks, Ali. I'm grabbing a pad as well, so I'm going to draw with you. And it's in talking, I'm giving people a little bit of a moment to grab a pen and a pad. So yes, by all means,
wonderful.
Share your screen.
Now, I'm not desperately practiced, but let's just give this a go. Let's just do this together. So if we all start with the circle.
Lovely.
And in our circle, we are going to draw a vertical line, more or less, and a horizontal line. So we have some nice quadrants. And then we're going to label these quadrants. So at the top here, we have, this is the high challenge, high support model. So at the top, we have high support. At the bottom, we have the opposite, which is low support. And over on the right, we have high challenge. Oops. Where's my box gone? There we go.
Well done, Ali. I'm very impressed with this.
High challenge. I think we'll just do that. And over here, we've got the opposite, which of course is low challenge. Just go over there. So our grid looks something like this. Have you got something looking like that, Mark?
Yes.
Wonderful. So when we think about, oh no, we want that. We want a text box here. So Mark, thinking about this top quadrant on the left, where we have a situation where there's a lot of high support going on in an organization and low challenge, what are people feeling? What are people feeling here?
Like, probably comfortable. And I was going to say, I suppose, very yellow energy language, uninspired, actually. So I just do my job and, you know, I feel all right. I feel good, but I don't feel special. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, it's fine. And you've hit the nail on the head. We call this the place of comfort. Some people thrive in it. They're happy. They're never, ever pushed to be the best they can be. So you typically get mediocre performance in this place of high support with low challenge. So let's have a look at this box down here, the opposite, where there exists very high challenge and very low support. How are people feeling now, Mark?
Definitely stressed. I mean, it's the biggest stress creator is that I don't feel in control by the high challenge, because it almost certainly isn't explicit in my experience. I'm not in control. I feel stressed. I feel pressured. nervous, very uncomfortable, actually.
Uncomfortable. Oh dear. So yes, so this is, again, you've nailed it. This is the place of absolute stress. There's typically high staff turnover. Some people, like my son, who's 99% fiery red energy, thrives in this sort of environment, but not many people do. Not many people are like that. There's typically high staff turnover. It leads to burnout. And that's not what you want. We don't want high staff turnover because it's very expensive. So what about this bottom left-hand corner, Mark? Low challenge and low support.
I had two things in my head: totally demoralizing and pointless. Literally pointless, purpose-free zone. There's no sense of purpose or motivation or drive or initiative.
So again, it's not a happy place to be. This is the place of apathy. Often when organizations are going through change, people can be in this low challenge, low support place, especially if leaders aren't talking to them, aren't being with them, that, you know, they're just kind of left to get on with the you know, whatever they're doing. And organizations can go here really quickly, and it's really devastating. So this final box up here, Mark, what goes on in this box of challenge, high challenge and high support?
Yeah, there's energy, it's purposeful, it's inspiring, it's challenging in the nice sense of the word, high challenge in that sense. Yeah, inspiring. I think there's a collective spirit as well. I think there's almost like a team energy. This is high performance teams for me, if you're in that space.
Absolutely. And what we tend to get is commitment and consistent high achievement and development in that space. And this is where people are pushed, they're challenged and supported to be the best shining example of what they can possibly be. When leaders see more in you than you can see in yourself, and it just brings it out in this place.
So I've got a really important question for those like me who have an erring towards higher support. So not enough high challenge to truly drive high performance. How do you help someone who's a high support and medium challenge to become more balanced? Ali, what's your advice?
It's only through practice, through getting to understand what it feels like. And we have, Mark, a beautiful questionnaire, which may be open to people at the end, which can measure you on that balance. And by understanding what the behavior is, that is high challenge and high support is key to understanding, first of all. It's also tapping into positive regard and genuineness, because positive regard is more supporting, genuineness is more challenging. To have high expectations is quite challenging. We temper that with reinforcement, so catching people doing something right. Also, the OK Corral is a great model coming from transactional analysis, which, again, if people are familiar with that, we can do another session on OK Corral sometime, Mark.
I love that. That's adult to adult behavior, isn't it? It's being open to add value, which includes some challenge about what you could do differently to be even better. So I like that model. Ali, thank you so much, because I think it brings to a nice conclusion this dip into liberating leadership, which we've had. And can we go to the higher level to finish off? I know, because we're advocates of your 4-step process to liberating leadership. What are those 4 steps for us as a lovely way to conclude this Boostcast?
Well, all leaders need these 4 steps. Most leaders are rubbish at doing the 4 steps, I have to say. We have to teach them. But visioning, first of all, and that's where we started, Mark, your visibility of personal style and setting the vision for the team even if you don't know the vision yet, it's just being really clear, you know, come, come, come. We will find a new way of working together. Whatever that vision is, make it clear. Then mobilizing, once you've set your vision, mobilize your troops almost. Get them, these are the skills, these are the behaviors I want, these are the attitudes I want. So the skills you need there are explicitness and feedback, maintaining momentum. You need to maintain your own assertiveness and nip performance issues in the bud. Because if you don't, you're not going to pull people with you and bad habits will form. Once the person's internal motivation has kicked in, you can switch your style to a much more collaborative one of developing, we call it, where we do now tap into their motivation and we apply different strokes now for those different folks who are doing that. These are almost your early adopters if we're talking about change. They need different quality of leadership to the first two stages, which are very transactional. So now we're being more transformational with these bright sparks. It's all too easy, though, for leaders to get stuck there because it's a beautiful place for both leader and team member. The leader has to push them to the truly enabled stage where leader, you know, learner now becomes the leader, and they may go off somewhere else, or actually you may go off somewhere else. Your work may be done here. It's beautiful when you take a team through that 4-step process.
Fantastic. It's the one we adhere to, as you know, within Uspire. We believe in those 4 steps too. We see so much value from doing it. It comes back to what you said earlier about everyone can learn how to lead. And
yes.
The enable is enabling more leaders, that final step, which I like the completeness of that.
Yes.
Just to finish off, Ali, apart from saying a huge thank you, help us understand why butterflies is so evocative and symbolic for you, because that's what's behind you. It's also what's on your books as a symbol. Why the butterfly for Ali Stewart?
Well, as Lewis Parsons so beautifully described in his chat with you, Mark, it's that transformational journey from caterpillar through all the stages. You know, have you read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, that beautiful children's book, you know, where it eats and eats and eats, forms a chrysalis, but it has to at some point emerge bigger, better, more beautiful than before. And you can't just stay being a caterpillar. That's not healthy. We need everybody to be butterflies.